Hi guys, welcome to your 5th video tutorial. Today we're going to have a look at some basics in Photoshop. If you have a look through your workbook, one of the first things it recommends is for you to have a bit of a play around and experiment for those of you who don't know much about Photoshop. There are infinite ways to do infinite things in Photoshop. Every time you want to do one thing, there's probably 10 ways to do it. I've learned the basics just by trial and error over time, and like anything, the more time you spend with it, the more you know. The big thing to use in Photoshop, just like AutoCAD, is to know the shortcuts and know the commands to make things easier for yourself. So I'll try and cover off a few of those today, and there's a couple in the workbook and things like that as well. But you should spend some time doing a bit of research and see what different shortcuts are out there by having a look on Google, and have a look at what ones that you would want to see most. Alright, so if we have a look around at the basic layout of Photoshop, pretty standard. Up here you've got different things like you bring your images in, your layer control, your selection control, all those sorts of things. So these are the big puppers in terms of overarching things in Photoshop. Then on the left you've got this tool panel over here. So your selection tool, which you'll always need to come back to, which is V for the shortcut for that. Then there's this square rectangular selection tool, and then within each tool you've got different aspects to play with, like select only what you select, additions to selections, subtractions from selections, feathering, all sorts of stuff. My personal favourite selection tool, which you'll probably be using a lot of in your collages, is the Polygon Lasso tool. Some people like the magnetic because they think it saves time, but I think in the end, if you do it properly the first time, Polygon Lasso tool, you don't have to spend so much time fixing it up. So that's a good one there. Your crop tool, sometimes you'll need that to change the size of your sheets as you bring them in. Eyedropper tool is great to take a colour from an existing image and then make that the colour of something that you want to paint on. So you might get a really nice colour from an image that you already have, but you want to use that in a new image. Just bring in that existing image, use the eyedropper tool on it, and you'll see that in action. The brush tool, good for painting on colour, but also good for painting on textures using the mask tool. The clone stamp tool you can use to copy things across. You hear about people cleaning up imperfections in photos and things all the time by using a stamp tool to get rid of blemishes and things that they don't want. Eraser tool, standard. Paint bucket tool to cover the entire sheet with one colour. Blurring, adding text to it. The pan tool as per Photoshop normal. So that's your basic tools that you need, and I'd recommend you have a play with every single one of them and figure out what they all do. And then obviously if you right click any of them, it'll bring up a different set of tools within that tool as well. For example, if I right click on paint bucket, it's also brought up the gradient tool. Right click on brush tool gives you the pencil tool. So have a look within each one of those and have a play around. If in doubt, like in AutoCAD, you have to press escape to get back to the final command. I find pressing V or going back to the selection tool, or the move tool, sorry, at the start will always get you back to your baseline, so you can start again, just like escape. Over on the right hand side there's a few more things which are more detailed about what you're playing with. So you've got the layers, channels, paths over here, so you can see all your layers, and layering is probably the most important thing in Photoshop. You'll see that in a second when we run through it. There's some character and paragraph I've got set up over here, but this is all going to vary depending on what workstation you have available to you. So if you go up into Window and then into Workspace, you can click Essentials, and that'll update everything so that it looks pretty similar to this. Otherwise, you might like a different workspace. You might prefer a typography workspace, and so that'll change it up there again. Or you might even like something like photography. But I'll just like my essentials, nice and easy. Alright, so let's get started with a simple project. We won't go through too much today because we'll obviously go through your booklets and you can ask questions as you go along. but I'll run through some basics so you have a rough idea of what's going on. So we want to start up a new page. For now I'm just going to work with an A4, which we know is 297 by 210 millimeters. Always keep your resolution at 300 because you want to be able to print this thing. Unless you're working web-only files, which is going to be very rare in architecture school, you always want to be at 300 resolution. Otherwise, when you go to print, it might look fine on screen, but it's going to come out terribly blurry. Okay, so let's bring out this A4 landscape sheet. So I've got an image here that I'm going to drag in so that we can start to layer up the Farnsworth House in Illinois by Miss Farnsworth. So now I only want to work on the perspective on the left, the line drawing. So I want to get rid of this photograph on the right. Now, easy way to do that without having to delete this or to jeopardize the integrity of the line drawing is to go on your left selection tool, which is the rectangular marquee tool, outline the bit you want to keep, and then come on down to the right in the layers box where it says add layer mask. Click on that, and now it's only kept the bit that I had selected. So that's nice and easy. Now I can center this in the middle of my sheet and start to play around with a few things. Now you notice Photoshop has created a few layers now. I've got this background layer that we're working on, which is always locked, which is handy, and then the Photoshop layer of the Barcelona Pavilion here as well. Now I like to make a copy of the most important layer or the background layer just so that if anything happens to this layer when I'm working on it, there's always going to be a backup there. So I like to keep that one down there hidden so if anything happens, just a bit of security. So now we've got this layer, we want to start adding some textures or adding some color to this drawing. So the way we want to go about doing that is by creating a new layer on top. Then we want to zoom in. I want to create a color over the top of this first landing platform. So how I'm going to do that is up to this selection tool, which looks like an Australia or a coat hanger, Polygon Lasso tool. Click on that. I'm just going to trace along the outside edges of this box. And now it's made a selection. You can see this line that's sort of dancing around, looks like marching ants, as they call it in Adobe. So that's now selected. Now these stairs are going to be in the way here, so I want to deselect those. You can either come up here and change your selection tool to deselect, or you can leave it on its normal select and press Alt while you're selecting, and you'll notice that it's now changed to a minus or subtraction sign. If I take Alt off, it's now a positive. So I hold down Alt, I click where these stairs are so that they're not going to become part of this. I quickly trace around, follow along here, and double click to finish, and now it's only got this landing pad. So now I have this layer. I want to make this landing pad a nice type of red, and I'm going to get my paintbrush tool and I'm just going to paint it on. So now you notice my brush size is absolutely massive. So if you click the left square bracket next to the P on your keyboard, that will allow you to decrease the size, and by the same token if you press the right square bracket, it will allow you to increase the size of your brush. If you come up to the brush tool, you can change it so it's a feathered brush, so it produces something like that, or you can change it so that it's a hard brush, so that it makes something like that. That's totally up to you. Then you can also play with the opacity of the brush. You can see it's at 50 at the moment, so it's increasing slowly over time. Otherwise just chuck it all the way up to 100, and we're just going to colour this thing in. Right, so that's my platform now all coloured in. I've still got these marching ants, so I want to get rid of them so I can start doing some other things. So I press Control D or Command D, and now that layer is finished with, and it's all ready to go for doing some other things. Now, if I wanted to bring in a texture, then I'll just go to my textures file that I've got ready, drag and drop a texture in, and then we can double click on that to secure it, and we can start to do some different things with the texture. Okay, so now again, I just want to select the area that I want to give a texture to, so I'm just going to do these top and bottom fascia panels. There we go, nice and quick for you guys. Obviously you can zoom in and make this a little bit cleaner in your drawings, but I just want to do this nice and quick for you guys. There we go. Get rid of the stairs as before. We don't want to see that panel. So there we go. Okay, so now this, you can see it's still selected over the top. What we can do is create a mask over the top of this, just as before, and it's only going to select the items that we have selected. Now you'll notice that the texture is very, very dark when it comes out over here. So we can play in this panel and test a few different things. So I like to click out of that and leave it selected, and then just scroll down on my keypad with the arrow key, going down and down and down, and test a few different things, test a few different variations, and it'll give you some different softness, but it really depends on what's behind the image coming up. So I'm just going to put it on normal for now, and then I'm going to change the opacity down to 25% so that it's a more soft texture. Now obviously the texture you choose will depend on what sort of image you're trying to create, and you can further go and paint out these things. So you can see here, this column shouldn't have the texture over the top of it. So if I'm clicked on my mask tool over here, I can get my paintbrush out and I can just paint black over the top of it. So I've got black selected, and it's going to get rid of that stuff there. Now obviously I've painted too much now. I just wanted to have a little bit gone, so I've changed it back to white, and it's going to allow me to paint that texture in. Now you see it's gone over the edges. So what we can do is we can make a selection. We can paint black, and it's going to bring it in nice and tight there. Control D to deselect. So that's a way that you can really get your masking and your textures to do what you want it to do. So again, just nice and quick. So I just select the bit that I want to get rid of. B, I'm still on my mask. Press B for brush, and then I can paint black over the top, and it's going to get rid of that texture where I don't want it. Nice and easy. So that's using a mask tool for textures, and that is showed you how to do some selections. Okay, so we're going to leave it at that for today. I'm sure you're going to have a million questions, but I encourage you to have a big play around and to really get stuck into the tools and the commands and the shortcuts and all sorts of different things, but have a play with it. Now, a cool cheat that I was shown in second year or third year was a website called cgtextures.com. You can create a free account there, and you can download as many textures as you want to add to your drawings, which is great. It's really nice to have a good selection of textures handy and a good library so that you can make your architectural drawings very quickly without having to worry too much. Same thing, you can download trees, all sorts of things that you might need. So have a look on CG Textures. That's it from me today. Keep on working, and we'll post up your Photoshop questions either to the discussion board, or on Monday evening we will go through any questions you might have. Thanks very much guys, hope you've enjoyed. Cheers, bye.